call this meeting of the Danvers Town Meeting, Town Manager Action Review Committee on August 15, 2024. The committee members who are present are Nova, how do I pronounce your last name?
Samade.
Thank you. John Almeida, Fawn Anderson, Noah Levitt, Mike Matvichuk, John Jaworski, and myself, Sally Calhoun. Mary Beth Very may be attending the second half of our meeting, but couldn't be here for 6. And Natalie Fiore and Dan Gagnon are both absent, informed me ahead of time. So tonight, we're gonna have, by remote contact, 2 members of the Mass Municipal Association's Form of Government Committee. Michael Dutton, who's the town manager of Bridgewater, and Julie Jacobson, the retired former town manager of Auburn, Massachusetts. The Form of Government Committee, which is part of the Mass Municipal Association, offers services to cities and towns that are doing what we're doing. A lot of places call this a charter review, and that's pretty accurate. I mean, we don't have a charter per se, we have a statutory form of government, but it's basically the same concept of reviewing how the structure of the town works. So these 2 speakers, I've talked with both of them briefly, you know, we're very happy to attend. Prior to tonight's meeting, I had gone to the Mass Municipal Association website, and they have a little presentation they call Local Government 101, which I highly recommend if you have some time to go to that site and look at it. There was also a webinar on their site, which was called Form of Government FAQs. And I just learned a lot from those sites about stuff like, in Massachusetts, there's 59 cities and 292 towns. Among the towns, there's many that have town meetings. There are some that have, of course, many have select boards as well. A lot of them have professional town managers or town administrators. Even cities can have a mayor and a professional manager. So it's kind of interesting, the different formats. I thought it was really fascinating, and I know our guests tonight will go into more detail. But I just kind of learned a lot about what the considerations are. So I think it's the Massachusetts Municipal Association website. And the thing I clicked on was called Local Government Detail. But I just kind of learned a lot about what the considerations are. Okay. So I asked our guests to try to sign into the Municipal Association to give us time to do some of our preliminaries. So I've shared our agenda with everybody. One of them was the minutes of our July meeting. I asked our guests to try to sign into the Municipal Association to give us time to do some of our preliminaries. So I've shared our agenda with everybody. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes of our July meeting? I asked our guests to try to sign into the Municipal Association to give us time. I feel prepared to vote. So I've shared our agenda with everybody. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes of our July meeting? I asked our guests
We're grateful
to
you're
try to
here.
sign into the Municipal Association to give us time. I feel prepared to vote. So I've shared our agenda with everybody. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes of our July meeting?
It's okay, it does. We're grateful you're here. 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 It's okay, it does. We're grateful you're here.
So
That's okay. Nice. Great player. 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 It does. Great player. That's okay. 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 It does. Great player.
Though, it's interesting to me because I was on the finance committee for, I don't know, 21 years or something, and we dealt with warrant articles. We never really dealt with the nitty gritty of how town meeting members are selected and, that part of it. And the Town Meeting Act really deals more with the creation of precincts, the number of precincts, the number of town meeting members per precinct, all that kind of stuff. It didn't really seem to be anything that I remember ever dealing with as a finance committee member. But I'd be open to doing that if you all thought.
Yeah, because I'm actually just curious, even you could tell me this next. Did you find that it worked? Like, from the FinCom point of view, do you agree with Tony? Are you like, this does make sense for these people to vote on the things that we think they should vote this direction on? Or did the FinCom kind of think, these people don't know what they're doing?
Well, the process is the finance committee reviews every warrant article that goes to town meeting. So most of them are budgetary, but then there'll be maybe a revision of a bylaw or an issue. I'm trying to think of other examples that are non-budgetary. Zoning in particular. So we review all of those, and the recommendation of the finance committee is the first motion before town meeting. So that much of it we did. I was often surprised, every now and again I think, I wonder which of these articles is gonna take the most time for town meeting to resolve. And the things that I thought would take a long time often did not. And the things that did take time sometimes took me by surprise. But I think other members of the FinCom were more skilled at being able to make that distinction. And as I think we've said, I think it was here, that in particular the budget, it's approved so quickly, it seems. And we, on the finance committee, we'd spend hours and hours and hours and meetings and meetings and meetings to review each line of every budget. But maybe town meeting members have come to rely on the FinCom's deep review. A lot of people might watch the meetings, so they come in knowing, what's been done, but I don't know.
I kind of agree with that about the FinCom. They have the purse, they have the hands on the purse, and I think that's an issue that a lot of people wonder about. And coming from a financial standpoint, I'd be curious to find out what they do think about
Right.
the way we run our government here in Danvers.
If they think
Purse,
we
they have
should
the
just do
hands on
it.
purse.
decisions and, or not that they would, but, you know, if they just think, I don't know if these people.
And I've always find them as a key entity in our government here.
Agreed.
I do think about, to the aspect, if I understand correctly, FinCom is appointed by the moderator.
It is.
So I think that's sort of a unique part of our structure. In that sense, the moderator has a tremendous amount of influence in what comes forward, the recommendations that are made that come before town meeting. So I'm wondering if that is worth
Looks like our
having them
guests
comment on as well.
might be here. Julie, can you hear us? Hello, Julie, can you hear us? We're still getting in. And it looks like Michael Dutton is there too. Michael, can you hear us?
Huge major.
Hello up there? Let me ask Joe.
Okay, he waved.
Hello.
They can see us, I think they're afraid to put the volume on.
Probably.
Joe, are we doing everything we need to have our guests join us? Julie, can you hear us? Yes.
Hi, Paul.
Yes, now I can.
Taking a house call. We tested earlier and it was working, so something got a little
Wacky, it was fun.
funky in the last few minutes. We'll take care of it.
Still got a bit of a delay or an
So-
echo.
We want to make sure we can hear it in the broadcast.
Okay.
So it'll just be 1 minute.
Sure.
Excuse me. So Julie, this has to be muted entirely.
Still got a bit of a delay
So if you can mute that.
or an echo.
Yeah, mute here. And then give me 2 minutes and I'll get it back. My apologies. I was across the street, I put it on the TV, and I saw something looked a little off. So I ran over. My apologies. I swear this worked at 3 o'clock when I was here.
No problem.
So Sally, to your point, are there others feel the same way about the bringing?
Okay, okay, I'll add that to the letter, and I will get that out between now and our next meeting.
And the
Thank you.
moderator also appoints a ZBA, don't you?
No, I know the answer to this. The ZBA is appointed by the select board.
Oh, it is.
The finance committee is the only entity that I'm aware of that town moderator appoints, though she also appointed this committee
Right.
because that was part of the vote of town meeting, was for her to appoint. The select board appoints the board of registrars, the cable television advisory committee, the student town advisory committee, and the zoning board of appeals. That's the last attachment in the packet that I gave you tonight. Did I give it to you when you came in?
Yeah, she had.
Okay.
It's funny because when I was reviewing, I was looking at my notes when I was reviewing this, and I literally underlined, why does the town moderator,
I know,
if for the finance,
It is
like,
strange.
it's just
Yeah.
one of those things that I would love to understand how that.
Me
came
too.
to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't alone in just,
No.
Not that I disagree, but it made me feel like
no, yeah.
there's
I just
something
wanna know
I'm
the
missing.
why.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something we can ask when she comes, or if she comes, or a question I can pose to her.
What's that?
Sorry?
You guys see the people on Teams?
I don't know if they're.
Mike, can you say something so we can test our sound system?
I can hear you very well. I hope you
Thank
can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. And Julie, how about you?
I can hear you very well.
Thank you, same here. Thank you so much for your patience, guys. So we're gonna go
problem.
back to our meeting. We use our first 15 minutes, 20 minutes now, approving minutes from our last meeting, getting a little housekeeping done, and do just a little bit of our discussion while we were waiting for the snags to be fixed. So thank you both so much for agreeing to be with us tonight. I wanted to introduce you guys to our committee. Mike Dutton is the town manager from Bridgewater, Mass. And Mike, it doesn't look like you're in a car.
No, I made it. I made it, thank goodness.
And
About
Julie-
5 minutes ago.
Thank you so much. And Julie Jacobson is a retired former town manager of Auburn, Mass. Thank you both for coming very much. I'm Sally Calhoun, the chair of the committee. And I'll go around so the committee members can introduce themselves. Why don't we start with you, Noah?
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Noah Lovett.
I'm Nova Sabity.
Fawn Anderson.
John Almeida, thank you. Mike Matvichuk.
And John Jaworski.
Very good, John. You want to pull around here so people can see? I have a lot of papers in the way, but
I might just close that door. Is
Sure. So as I communicated with the two of you, we have been charged by our town meeting, as appointed by the moderator of our town meeting, to review the Danvers Town Meeting Act and the Danvers Town Manager Act. We have a strong town manager form of government. We have a representative town meeting. Our town meeting form of government was, I think, first set up in 1930. And I believe we've been a strong town manager format since the 40s. I don't have those dates, those facts at my fingertips. But can you explain a little bit what the form of government committee of the MMA can provide to kind of help us get through this process?
Sure, Julie, you want me to? I'll handle that one. So the form of government committee is actually a committee of municipal managers, so it really falls under the umbrella of the Mass Municipal Managers Association, the MMA, and not the MMA, although the MMA is the sort of the larger umbrella over all the different organizations. So we, as I say, are a group of mostly municipal managers. Most of us are active. There are a few retirees that are also on our committee, and our real point in being is essentially to offer guidance or suggestions or advice to committees just like yours. We also offer advice to town managers or town administrators who are looking to help committees or help shape bylaws that may affect governance overall. So that's sort of our mission. We don't try to act as your town attorney or your town council. That's not the role we play. We just want to make sure that you consider all the factors when you're thinking about making some changes, or stress that you may not need any changes in the way you're doing things. So it's just sort of a broad 30,000-foot level of assistance that we try to provide. And then if you need further help, sometimes we've got other members that have specific experiences that will be helpful to you, and sometimes we'll tell you that those are the issues that you may have are better addressed by your town council or your town attorney. So that's essentially it. I don't know, Julie, if you have more.
Great job. I couldn't agree more. I would just say I've been involved since I retired about a year and a half ago, but prior to that, I've been involved in the FOG or the FOG committee for many, many years. And as Michael said, we have a great group of managers, whether they're members of the committee or not, statewide, that are always willing to step in and help. So we do try to match various managers depending on the situation, and try to find you managers that maybe have been in a similar situation. Maybe they've recently been in a community that underwent a change similar to what you're considering. So we try to look at it from that angle so we get you the right people to speak to you.
Thank you very much. And Julia, I was able to look at the MMA's website, their, what's it called, Local Government 101, and also to view a webinar on municipal government FAQs or something. So I've seen, I feel like I know you guys, I've seen you now in these different contexts. But as I recall, Julie, you stepped into a community that had just undergone a pretty major change in their form of government. Can you describe for us what it had been and what it switched to in your experience?
Certainly. So just by way of background, prior to going to the town of Auburn, where I went in 2011, I became the first town manager there. I had been the assistant city manager in Worcester. So completely different forms of government, but a lot of similarities in municipal operations. So when I got to Auburn, the charter had been amended in May of 2009. And some of the major changes in that charter were, number one, changing from a town administrator to a town manager. Number two, vesting more authority in the town manager, similar to what Danvers has now. Vesting a lot of the appointing authority into a town manager, and therefore changing a lot of the elected board and commission positions to become appointed. We also had, at that time, several town administration positions that were elected, that were to become appointed upon my getting there. So basically, my first 3 months there, I had to restructure and reorganize the entire government because the charter was dictating that in May of that year, as certain elected terms expired, those positions were no longer filled or no longer in place. So we had a highway surveyor. That position went away 3 months after I got there. At the time, we didn't have a Department of Public Works. We had several different departments. There were 25 different departments, all of which reported to various boards and commissions, worked with various boards and commissions. There was no continuity. It was very decentralized. There was no shared vision, no shared resources, no shared staff, and no shared policies amongst the departments. So my job for the first 3 months was to completely restructure the government based on the new charter and to come up with an operational and organizational structure that would match the charter and allow the town to move forward under that new charter.
So prior, what kinds of positions had been elected that became appointed positions? Just if you could think of a couple of examples.
Absolutely. So I would say the planning board was one of the largest changes. The planning board had been elected and it became appointed. There were a number of boards and committees that had been elected. The only ones that remained elected was the library board of trustees. Everything else became appointed. And under the charter, the town manager appointed all but 3 of those committees. And the select board appointed 3. And that was to kind of keep a check and balance in place on regulatory issues. So the finance committee, the board of registrars, and the zoning board of appeals were appointed under the new charter by the board of selectmen. All the other boards and committees were appointed by the town manager, by me. As far as positions, again, the highway surveyor was a position that oversaw the whole highway department as an elected official, which certainly brought a lot of challenges to that. The collector position was elected as well. And the clerk was elected, but under the charter, the town opted to keep the clerk's position as elected. I will tell you that the next 2 clerks that I worked with, both the one that was there during the charter change and the one that after she retired, the next one in, they both would tell you and me that they wish the position was appointed, that the position became so technical, that there were so many skills and certifications and requirements of a town clerk that they both very much felt that it was not a good idea to have an elected town clerk because of the requirements of the job. Now, you can talk to other communities that do have an elected town clerk, and those town clerks are extremely talented, especially those that have been there for years. They've got the training, they have the certifications. But for somebody brand new coming in as an elected official into that position, I think that's a challenge.
And go ahead, Mike.
I just had a question. Do you know what prompted these changes in Auburn? Like, was there some groundswell of we need to change things and here's why?
You know, it's interesting. That's a great question. They had tried to change the charter maybe 5 or 6 years prior to that. And I believe the groundswell of support for moving forward and looking at an amended charter was that they felt that a lot of the positions were very political and they were trying to take the politics out of the positions. They also believed, the town believed, that there should be more accountability and more efficiency if you had the authority, executive power, in one person as opposed to spread among various elected officials. So it's interesting, there was a groundswell to have the committee, and the effort failed once, and then when it passed in May of 2009, it only passed town meeting the annual town election by 16 votes.
Wow.
So it was a close vote. I would tell you, and many people in Auburn would tell you, that after seeing the new charter go into effect and the tremendous amount of success that local government had with that new charter, that if you were to take that vote today, I think there'd be an overwhelming support of and a huge majority to keep the charter the way it is. There were a couple of people throughout the years who stepped in and said, you know, we want to go back to the old one. We want to change the charter. There was no support for it. They went to town meeting. Town meeting didn't support it. The Board of Selectmen didn't support it. There were just a couple of groups that wanted to, I guess, reclaim the authority they had prior to the charter change, and they were trying to make a move to change the charter, and there was absolutely no support to do that. The charter worked very well. People were happy with what happened, but I do think prior to them actually making that change, I think they saw that there was a lack of accountability. There was, in many ways, a lack of consistency, and having a decentralized form of government in a community that was, you know, it not a huge community, but 16,000, 700 people. But during the day, there's 32,000 people that would be in Auburn because there's a huge commercial industrial component to it. So having a fairly large community, having a decentralized form of government just didn't work. And I think the townspeople who got together to form the Charter Review Committee recognized all of that.
Thank you very much. Mike Dutton, how about you? You, again, looking through the stuff with the MMA website, you're in Bridgewater now, but you've been in other settings and you've experienced different types of forms of government. Can you describe a little bit about what kind of stuff you've done?
Sure. Actually, it's interesting because listening to Julie, I think that's the first time I've really listened to Auburn's experience from start to end, and it's not dissimilar at all to Bridgewater's experience. Bridgewater changed its form of government a little more radically. It went from open town meeting form of government, which I think everybody knows, to a council manager form of government, and that vote took place in 2010. What precipitated that, I wasn't there, so I don't know specifically, but what I'm led to believe what precipitated that was that there was this perception similar to Auburn that a lot of positions were politicized, over-politicized, and the elected planning board, even though they were elected, they were sort of made up of developers and engineers that would sort of give each other approvals on projects that might not otherwise have been approved or shouldn't have been approved otherwise. So there was a lot of disgruntlement about that. The town's financial condition was awful, and anytime you have bad financial conditions, that's going to breed certainly some discontent among the residents in the town meeting. So there was sort of a perfect storm in Bridgewater that encouraged a small group to get together and propose. It wasn't an elected charter commission. It was a group that got together and put an article on town meeting warrant, and it passed at town meeting, and then it passed fairly significantly at the election. I believe that was 2010. And so 2011, beginning of the year in 2011, the new council took its seat and went on from there. There was a very rocky start, I can tell you that. And they chewed through a couple town managers in short order, and then I got there in 2012. So the town had lived a couple of years under the charter. There was no work had been done on what Julie had mentioned, formulating committees, committee responsibilities, how they get appointed, what we commonly refer to in Bridgewater is the administrative code. Nobody had done any work on that. So all the boards and committees that saw this big change coming, nothing happened. And so when I came in, I had to explain to them that no, everything has really changed, and that was a difficult lift because they've been operating for over 2 years without any guidance. So anyway, that was a little bit of Bridgewater. I've also served in an open town meeting form of government in a very small town, and as Julie said, we had elected tax collector. Well, originally we had elected tax collector, elected treasurer, elected highway surveyor, elected clerk, elected Board of Selectmen, obviously. All the boards, almost all the boards were elected in my small town. And that was very decentralized. The town went through a change. They went from three-member Board of Selectmen to a 5-member select board, and that was helpful. They also converted the elected treasurer to an appointed treasurer. However, they left an elected tax collector, elected clerk, and then almost all the boards and committees elected. So for that town at that particular time, it was what they could do, and I think probably right now there's some move afoot to begin to make some more changes, convert some of those more technical positions to appointed positions rather than elected positions. So it's yeah, I've been through like minor changes, been through major changes, and depending on the town, it all depends on the needs of the town. You know, sometimes incremental change is going to be the best approach that you can possibly take. Sometimes in the case of Bridgewater, I do think that drastic change, based on what I've read, drastic change was necessary. So it really all boils down to what the town really needs, I guess.
So in Bridgewater, were there a lot of elected positions which then became appointed?
There were, similar to Auburn, all the boards and currently I appoint all the boards and committees. I do not appoint library trustees; those are elected. I do appoint only 3 members to the finance committee. The finance committee is made up of 9 members, 3 of whom are appointed by me, 3 by the elected town clerk, and then 3 by the town council. So the only elected, quote unquote, full-time position we have in Bridgewater is the town clerk right now. And Julie mentioned, depending on who's serving as your elected clerk, half the time the elected clerk would be just as happy as an appointed clerk. The position, all the positions, not just the position of town clerk, but many of the positions, all the positions really, all the financial positions in town have gotten so much more technical, and the need to really create, you know, as much efficiency as possible within your town hall is really driving a lot of the change from elected to appointed, because you want to be able to appoint people that are qualified to do the job, competent to do the job, and just, you know, good at what they do. So right now in Bridgewater, I appoint all the staff. I appoint all the. I am like a truly strong town manager in a city form of government, and so that is. I appoint almost everybody except for the couple of boards that are still elected. Obviously, the school board, library, and the one elected town clerk.
So you said initially that in Bridgewater it's a council manager form of government, and I assumed you meant like a city council.
Correct.
And is it a 3-member council or 5?
It's actually a 9-member council.
And are those elected positions?
They are elected. So in a council manager form of government, if you try to equate it to a town meeting, either representative or open town meeting, the Board of Selectmen or the select board in a open town or a representative town meeting form of government is the executive. In the council manager form of government, the council is the legislative body or the town meeting, and the town manager or the city manager is the executive. So that's sort of, if you're trying to sort of equate the two, that's probably the best way to try to compare. And the council is all elected. Obviously, I'm not elected. I'm the one person that's hired by the town council.
So do you guys have questions? I kind of tried to start off with the stuff that I'd learned from looking through the MMA website, but you guys have probably questions more specific to Danvers. So go ahead, John.
Yeah, sure. I'm just wondering, what's the size of Bridgewater, population-wise?
Bridgewater is about 30,000 people, 30,000 residents. We have Bridgewater State University, which on any given day adds about 10,000 more people. And we've got the Department of Corrections, which has now, I think, they're down to 4 different facilities, incarceration facilities. So, they don't get to be counted as residents, but it's additional work for our fire and ambulance.
Go ahead.
Mike, another question. Did you get any pushback when you went to the council format versus the open meeting? Did you have any pushback on that change?
There was certainly, it was obviously a hot political issue, but I think during that time back in 2010, as I mentioned, the town was in such horrible financial shape that I think people were just looking for anything that might be able to help drag the town out of its mess. And so I don't think there was as much pushback as you might imagine. I don't think there was as much pushback on that drastic change, open town meeting to council manager form of government. Had it been today, in fact, today I can tell you there's a group that, as Julie mentioned, there's a group that actually wants to go back to open town meeting form of government. Is that going to happen? Very, very highly unlikely, I would say. But there certainly is a group that feels that they've lost their voice and that the town is growing sort of outside. The town is changing. And growing sort of outside, sort of their control. And those folks tend to be the folks that remember open town meeting and have a desire to go back to it. But realistically, that's not going to happen.
And any other? Go ahead, Noah.
This is Noah. Either for Mike or Julie or both, I'm interested. I mean, you both shared examples of moving from decentralized to a more centralized or to strong or town manager. Would you say that is a trend that we're seeing across the state? Or is there a trend? I'm interested to just sort of see what the trends might be in that direction.
Do you want that one, Julie?
Sure. I believe that it is a trend. I think the more technical government gets and the more certifications that are required of personnel who work for municipal government, the more training, the more experience, that communities are looking to have the authority vested more in one individual than have that authority decentralized amongst elected officials. Because number one, you want consistency. And if the elected officials have certain authorities, yet the people in those positions are changing often, you're risking not having consistency, which is very difficult for government. I also think that COVID showed a lot of it brought out a lot of concerns about more decentralized authority, because a lot of decisions had to be made very quick. We had to be nimble. And for those communities that didn't have a strong CEO, and I think Michael would agree with this, it doesn't matter what the title is, whether it's a town manager or a town administrator, it's what the charter or the bylaw gives the authority to that person to do. But if that person didn't have the authority to make certain decisions, it slowed things down at a time where we couldn't slow down. Things were changing hourly. So I think during COVID, it became clear that it's very important to have authority vested in a town manager. And if it's not a town manager, then to have a very strong town administrator.
Thank you.
No, I would definitely agree with that. I would only add, by way of example, 50 years ago, the planning board might hire a planner, or the planning board might hire, a planning board clerk, and those people were actually employees of that planning board. Nowadays, personnel law, labor laws that affect municipal employees, personnel rules, personnel decisions that are made at the SJC or on a federal level are so complex. You cannot rely on a board to employ employees. It doesn't work. You're opening yourself up to an enormous risk. So So better to have somebody who's trained to deal with and knows the rules around labor, because labor in and of itself is a whole different world than it was, even 10 years ago for that matter.
Michael raises a great point. There are communities that had either elected or appointed personnel boards. And that seems to be an area that there's been a lot of change in that. I really firmly believe a community and municipal government needs to have an appointed human resource director or human resource department. There has to, if that power or authority is vested in the town manager, or the town manager can delegate that authority to an HR director. It's so critical because, as Michael said, the laws have become so complicated that towns are exposed to liability if they don't have somebody who knows what they're doing in the HR field. And some communities actually had the HR function vested within an elected treasurer, for instance, because many years ago, they didn't really need to have somebody for HR. So, it was almost, well, you're in the office, you handle it. And to have an elected person managing personnel records, again, I think that's a major exposure to a community. I think that could be a concern. I just want to make a point too, and I'm not sure on your charter, but when the town of Auburn looked at its charter and did some of their amendments, some things were included in the charter that were really specific. And as state law changes, and it changes often, some things in the charter may become antiquated. So it was always my philosophy and our town council's philosophy that try not to include technical or procedural matters in your charter. Keep those within your general bylaws or as policies within maybe the Board of Selectmen, because it's easier to change a bylaw than it is to change your charter. So we try to take specifics out of the bylaw and out of any of the bylaws with regard to the fees and fines. For instance, some bylaws have specific fees and fines, but many of those are dictated by Mass General Law. And when Mass General Law changes, if your bylaw stated $100 for being the maximum fine, but state law now says it's $50, you've got to go back and change your bylaws. So what we tried to do is put a lot of that technical procedural things into the Board of Selectmen so they could take up a review of it on an annual basis. All the fees and fines are reviewed by the Board of Selectmen every year. Town administration gives them the recommendations as to what those fees and fines should be based on Mass General Law, and we are finding that it does change. And the other thing that I would recommend, if you do have general bylaws, that you update them fairly frequently. When I got there, I undertook an omnibus overview and update of both the general bylaws and the zoning bylaws. And the zoning has been ongoing for 6 years. It takes time to go through all of the bylaws, but the general bylaws took 3 years. And we had bylaws in there that were 50 years old. I remember there was one bylaw that prohibited coasting, and we didn't even know what coasting was. And it turns out it's putting your standard into neutral and going down a hill. So, just important things like that, you have to keep up with it because, Michael said it before, 50 years ago, things were done completely differently than they are now. So it's good to keep your charter updated, but try not to make the charter so technical that you have to have a charter change every time there's a change in a law that might be embedded in your charter.
Yes, go ahead.
Do either of you have any pros or cons to mention for like a town council form or town meeting form? Do you find that one works better or worse or anything?
I'll tackle that one. So I think, as I mentioned before, it depends on your town. There are some towns that cherish their town meeting form of government, whether it's an open or representative town meeting. And there are some towns that, for instance, Bridgewater, we had almost 30,000 people, and towards the end, you'd have 25 people showing up for a town meeting. That's not effective. and that doesn't work. So I think it completely depends on the town. You know, Danvers, I don't know a lot about Danvers. I had a chance to read your Town Manager Act, which is actually, to Julie's point, is pretty good because it deals with just the basics and it doesn't really go into the details, which makes it kind of effective. And it's been in effect, obviously, for a long, long time, decades. So so to answer your question, though, really depends completely on the town. Personally, I love the council manager form of government. It works for where I am, it works for Bridgewater, but it may not work for towns that have a lot of residents that are very, very invested in town meeting. Just might not work.
And if I can add to that, I did work, as I mentioned, in the city of Worcester as the assistant city manager, but I was also there for 20 years in economic development. So most of my career before I got to Auburn had all been in the city of Worcester, and that is a planning manager council form of government. Of course, that's an enormous city. It's the second largest city in New England, but it was quite a change for me to go from a council manager form of government where the council met every week and they were the legislative body and decisions could be made very quickly, to going to a town where there was a representative town meeting and certain things had to wait for town meeting. So my biggest adjustment between the two was adapting to a system that was a little slower timeline-wise. And in the city of Worcester, we had done a number of TIFs to companies to try to attract them to come in and create jobs for Worcester residents. When we got to Auburn and a couple of companies were interested in having a TIF, we actually lost a couple of companies because even though we said we would call a special town meeting to have the town meeting look at and hopefully vote to approve a TIF, we couldn't get it done in enough time when there was competition amongst businesses. So that particular business actually went to Worcester because Worcester could get it done in about a week or two if they needed to. Whereas just with town meeting, calling it, posting it, everything you have to do to get a town meeting in place, we couldn't get it done fast enough.
Could you tell us what is a TIF?
Oh, I'm sorry, a tax increment financing plan. It's under the state's economic development incentive program, and it allows communities to provide certain local incentives as well as access to state incentives for certain companies that may be expanding or relocating into the community. And it's a tool that's used across the state. Some communities use it and some do not, but it's much more difficult to use that tool if you don't have a council form of government. I had always advocated to the state to try to give that authority to the Board of Selectmen, because the Board of Selectmen at least could be meeting and take that TIF up, but they hadn't changed the law as of when I left anyway.
Are there, anybody else have a question?
I just said one more.
Yeah.
When you have a government where a lot of these positions are elected, were there contested elections? I mean, a lot of times in our town, a lot of the positions we don't have a lot compared to what I'm hearing you describe. There really isn't a lot of interest in people running for these positions. Was that a problem in these earlier forms before they changed?
I know in Auburn, my understanding was it wasn't really a problem. There always seemed to be a candidate running for an office, but there was not a lot of competition. So my understanding is that certain people continued to get elected to certain boards and commissions because nobody else ran against them. And they were getting elected because they were the only name on the ballot, not necessarily because they were doing a good job. And that some of the elected officials who were in those positions ran for the seat for more personal reasons, or had an agenda that they wanted to accomplish versus running for the good of the community. And that's what my understanding was. And to your point, it's very difficult to get people to run for elected office, but it's just as difficult to get people to put their name in to be appointed. So we had to really do an incredible amount of recruiting to encourage people in the community to want to participate on boards and commissions because they're critical. And in some cases, we had trouble with board and commission members actually showing up. And there were certain quorum issues that we were running into with boards and commissions. So that became a challenge. So legislatively, we created, for instance, on the planning board, we created a couple of positions where we had alternate planning board members. And that allowed us to fill in when we needed to if we didn't have a quorum with the 5 regular members, permanent members. So the quorum issue was difficult. I know we had an issue with some of our members that would go away for 3 or 4 months in the winter. And again, that goes back to a quorum issue. And when you have an elected person doing that, there isn't anything you can do. But as an appointed official, I could say, look, if you miss more than 3 consecutive meetings and don't have a good reason for doing so, I'm going to remove you and put somebody else in your place. But again, it's very difficult. Some of it was contentious when we changed from elected to appointed. I was unfortunately the one that had to come in and remove certain people, and that's what I was hired to do. One of the jobs was to come in and straighten out, so to speak, some of the boards and commissions and try to get qualified people in there. So my first 3 months, I probably interviewed over 200 people in the community and tried to find a place for them and a fit in the organization, because you want people to be involved. And those people who were there for reasons that were not quite, because a project was going on in their backyard, for instance, or, their parents lived down the street from a project they wanted to stop. That's not a good reason to be on a board committee. So those types of things had to be dealt with and addressed. And I would say we also, in an effort to try to get people involved and engaged and want to participate, we started a Citizens Leadership Academy. And we would run the academy. It would take about 5 months, and we would have citizens come in and sign up, and every single week we would bring them to a couple of different departments and give them more information than they probably ever wanted, but engage them, bring them, show them the DPW, bring them to the animal shelter, bring them down to the police department. The police and fire ran their own academies as well, but the Citizens Academy showed them all the different aspects of town government. And we actually had several graduates of that program who were appointed to boards and commissions as a result of that, or who ran for elected office and became either selectmen or school committee members. So I think that's one way to try to pique the interest of your community members. And that way, when they do run for office or they're appointed to an office, they have a real solid background of how local government operates in your community.
Anybody else with questions? I have one or two. I did with the council manager form of government. So this, Mike, is for you. Does the council? Well, how does the planning board work? Does the planning board make decisions on projects that come before them, or does the council do that?
No, that's a great question. The planning board actually, the planning board is appointed, so I appoint the members of the planning board, but the planning board will approve projects or approve, same type of approval process that you would use in any city or town. They do have the authority to approve projects. The council's role in any sort of development scenario, and we've gone through this very recently, is to pass zoning. So you remember, you don't have a town meeting, so the council sits as your legislative body. So when you've got a zoning proposal or you've got a change in zoning that comes through whatever form, however it gets to the council is the one that ends up approving that. The planning board has an advisory role in that, just as they would at town meeting, but the council actually votes the zoning. But on subdivision approvals, special permits, variances, at least in our town, the planning board still handles all of that.
Now, I've tried to think about this process that we're undergoing in a couple of different ways. And one is, how does the form of government impact the lives of the citizens of the community? how can they engage in their community? How easy is it for them to get information to solve a problem, so on and so forth. So that interface between the government, town hall, and the residents work. Kind of what's the best thing we can do to make that as positive an experience as we can? And I think, by the way, Julie, as you were just describing the Citizens Academy, it's a great idea, and I know we have a Citizens Academy here. I've never attended it, but I've heard about it for years. And then the other question, the other point of view I'm trying to grapple with is for businesses in the town. Are there things that are better or worse if you're trying to open a business or operate a business in town? And I'm kind of concerned because it seems, maybe it's just me anecdotally noticing things I didn't notice before, there just seem to be a lot of empty storefronts and businesses closing. So I'm thinking, is there something about the way we have our government set up that's making it harder for businesses? And then, of course, the next step is generally other people that come in and out of the town. But the first two are the residents of the town and the business owners of the town I'm grappling with most. Do you guys have any insights into things that make it better for first citizens and second for businesses?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, I can especially speak to the business aspect because, as I said, the bulk of my career was economic development. So I worked with a lot of businesses. And when I was going to Auburn and leaving Worcester, a number of the businesses in Worcester said to me, "What are you going to Auburn for? They're so anti-business. They have vacant storefronts. You can't get a plan through the planning board." So I took that to heart when I got there to try to figure out why were businesses having a difficult time in Auburn? What was the problem? And how can we make it easier for them? And by making it easier for business, it doesn't mean you're allowing every business to come in, whether you want them or not. What it means is there a fair and equitable process for determining whether a business meets the bylaws of your community? And what I did realize, and the Board of Selectmen let me know, that the planning board was, and oftentimes, the first stop for a company. And if they were not being treated fairly or nicely at the planning board, they may never come back to the town. So a couple of things. I made sure that when I made the appointments to planning board, which had changed from elected to appointed, that I put people on there who understood that our philosophy moving forward was you still need to treat a business well. You might not like the business, you might not like the product that they're bringing in, but your job is to determine whether it meets the bylaws of the community or not. And you need to work with town administration on the other aspects of it, but the planning board has a specific role under Mass General Law. And I think it's important for communities to make sure that your board and commission members that are your regulatory boards and commissions are treating their applicants fairly, whether they're residents or businesses. Everyone needs to be treated fairly and consistently. We actually had a training that we did for customer service training for all of our boards and commissions and made it open to all of them, because I just felt that sometimes that board or commission was going to be the first point of contact that they ever had with the community, and you wanted it to be a good experience. And a couple of years later, I went back to some of those businesses that had told me before that they were having trouble and asked them, how is it going? Are you able to get what you need done, or are you being treated fairly? And it was always a positive response. And I'll just mention one more aspect. I set up a business roundtable, and I tried to have business leaders from different industry sectors in the community participate on the business roundtable. It was not a public meeting. It was a meeting that we held with town administration, myself, the assistant town manager, and we met quarterly with the business community and members of the business community. And we would tell them everything that we were doing, what was coming up for projects, what might be disrupting a certain neighborhood with regard to traffic, what we were doing with regard to our bond rating and keeping the tax rate down. It was to keep them informed on everything going on in town that might affect them as a business, and to give them the opportunity to hopefully let me know if there was an issue in town before they just uprooted and left. I used to say, please don't shut your doors before you come to me. I want to know what's the issue and give us a shot at it. Let us see if we can address it. Hopefully we can, but we can never address it if we don't know about it. So the Business Roundtable was a great way to set up communications between town administration and the local business community.
Thank you.
So I would only add, if I could, one example for both resident, being welcoming to residents and also being welcoming to businesses. One of the benefits of being in my position is that I can sort of dictate how we're going to address residents when they walk into our building. I don't live in Bridgewater. I live in another town, and I won't tell you where, but in the town where I live, every once in a while, as we all do, you have to go into town hall and you have to get something notarized, or you have to drop off your absentee ballot, or whatever you're doing. When I walk into town hall, there are windows. There's a big long hallway, and there are windows there for customer service. So several of the offices have sort of blocked off in back of the windows. So there's just enough room for somebody to sort of squeeze through to help me on the other side of the window, but I can't see anything in back of that barrier. And so, so when you walk up to a window and there's nobody there, but you can kind of hear voices behind the barrier, that's not very customer friendly, obviously. So in our town, I control the building. I can say, no, we're not going to have any barriers. We've got windows. We expect people to sit right there in customer service spots. And as Julie said, we go through customer service training, although it's been a while. But we've got, most of the people that are at those windows have been with us for a while. So it's a different aura. It's a different approach, and we make sure. I make sure that I walk around the building and I go to each window just to make sure that people are engaged in the work that they're doing, but also engaged with the people that they're doing that work for. So that's sort of the people part. The business part, we, just as an example, we just went through a fairly comprehensive rezoning process for our downtown area. So you mentioned, empty storefronts here and there. And trying to figure out why that is. Really, I can tell you in one word, it's Amazon. Stores that used to sell clothing, stores that used to sell hardware, stores that used to sell almost anything except for an experience are now operating through Amazon. So it all either comes through there or Home Depot or whatever the big box stores are. So very few people are going downtown to write an insurance policy, buy a screwdriver, buy a box of nails, buy a dress, buy a pair of jeans, what have you. It's either you need food, liquor stores, and experiences, coffee shops, restaurants, something that will give people an opportunity to get out of their house, sit down, and experience something. So that's largely why you see a lot of empty storefronts. We see them in Bridgewater. There are storefronts that have been empty for years. The entire time, the entire 12 years I've been in Bridgewater, there have been storefronts that have been empty. So when MBTA required zoning came along, we used that opportunity to kind of change our approach to downtown zoning. We decided, look, in our central business district, we're going to have form-based code, which means our zoning code is going to be extremely specific about what we want to see. The type of building, the roof, the materials used on the outside of the building, and we're not going to be so particular about what's really inside the building. Obviously, we had to accommodate or at least zone for 1,400 units of housing. That isn't far off what our downtown was already zoned for, so we just had to make it of right, not pursuant to a special permit. But now a business can come in, and they have. We've seen a huge turnover in properties in the downtown area, and we've seen construction getting underway for more commercial space, restaurant space, bank space, so on. So it's been a good thing, but we listened. We reached out, to Julie's point. We reached out. We listened to the existing business community, and we reached out to the quality business community, the quality developers we knew of that were doing work in Hartford and in Boston and Providence. And we said, what do we need? What do we need to give you so that you'll come to Bridgewater and decide to do something good in Bridgewater? And they told us. And based on that input, we went to the planning board, we went to the council, and we developed this, what we call a form-based code, which is now in place, and now we're starting to reap the benefits of that. So I do think you have to listen to your customer, both on the residential side and sort of the commercial side. And you have to, if you don't hear from them, you definitely have to reach out and solicit their opinions.
Go ahead, John.
I'm correct in us, town manager has to be a resident of Danvers, is that correct?
In our town manager act.
Mike?
Yeah.
In our town, the town manager, you just heard me say, has to be a resident of Danvers. You obviously are not a member of Bridgewater. Could you please comment upon that, on any level you wish?
I understand, your requirement has been in place since, I think, the late 40s. I'm not a fan of residence requirements, and I'll tell you why. So there are a lot of people, obviously our job is now a professional job. We train for it. We go through constant retraining and classes and conferences to keep our skills sharp. So when you are looking for a town manager or a town administrator and you want the top quality, the best you can get, that person might be a, relatively young mother who's got kids in the school district, or a young man who's got kids in a school district. And if you're going to require them to move to your community, they're going to have to take their kids out of school, put them in a new school district, and that alone really is a very heavy lift. You're asking people to uproot their lives for the job. And that fewer and fewer people are willing to do that. But I do understand, I actually hear it all the time, the town manager should live in Bridgewater. I have family issues that certainly did have family issues that precluded me from moving to Bridgewater. So had that been a requirement for me, I never could have taken the job. So I think you winnow down your available pool of applicants, I think, when you're too restrictive about a residency requirement. Requiring, it's a different thing. It's a little better if you say, require your town administrator or town manager to live within a certain distance of your town. That's a little more palatable. But if you're going to have a residency requirement, that's a little bit of a challenge. The other thing it does, especially in this scenario, if you think about it, I'm still paying a mortgage. I'll be paying a mortgage till I'm 95, I think. But right now, I think my mortgage rate is like 2.85 or something. I can't remember. I don't even remember the rate. If you asked me to move, I would sell my house and I'd be having to buy another house. I could never buy a similar house because the housing prices are so exorbitant, and interest rates right now are much higher than 2.85%. So there's that factor to sort of figure in as well. So it's nice to be able to have your manager live in the town that he or she is managing, but I think to build that requirement in, you really do narrow your quality applicants.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. Since I retired, I've been working for Community Paradigm, Bernie Lynch, and we do a number of different searches for town managers and town administrators across the state. And those that have a residency requirement have definitely limited their pool of applicants for all the reasons that Michael just said. Again, I've seen a number of communities that have changed it. I know in Central Mass, Shrewsbury changed it. I was on a call yesterday with Hudson. They had changed theirs because they couldn't get anyone to even look at the job when there was a residency requirement. Auburn had it was a residency requirement that could be waived by a 4/5 vote of the board. So at least there was some wiggle room there. So likewise, I wasn't going to even apply for the job if that wasn't in the charter. Because I did have younger kids. I think I had one in middle school and one had just started high school. I wasn't going to take them out of school for a 3-year contract. I didn't know that they would renew my contract. I was blessed to be there for 12 years. And I love the community, but at the time I took the job, I didn't know that. I had a 3-year contract, and I felt that uprooting my children, which could maybe be for a 3-year period, wasn't the best decision I could make for my family. So if it wasn't for that 4/5 vote that was allowed in Auburn, I never would have looked at that position.
Anything else? Anybody have particular? So we're just, as I mentioned to you guys in my emails to you, we're just at the beginning of our process. This is only our second official meeting, and we're still in the process of a deep dive into what our current documents are. And I think as we dig further, we'll have more practical questions that we deal with and issues. It's one thing to read on a piece of paper, you know, the town manager appoints these people, but to understand the significance of it, it takes a little more digging to understand. So I feel you've helped us so much in kind of the breadth of the task at hand. I feel like I understand a lot more. I've recommended to my colleagues the MMA website for additional information. But I'm so appreciative of you guys giving up time tonight. I'd asked you to log in at 6:15 and it's now 6:20. And we had a little delay at the start. But I really don't want to keep you any longer unless there's further stuff you need. We may well reach out to you again, but it's so reassuring to know that you're both there and that the MMA provides assistance like this. So thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And feel free anytime, you know, if any of you have questions, follow-up questions, just get in touch with me. You have my email address. I'm happy to answer them. I just
Yep.
want to commend you all for doing this because it's a huge undertaking to take a review of the charter, but I think it's so critical to do it. Because even little tiny things sometimes need to be changed that you don't think of. It's not just always the large things. Your government's running great. I'd say you have a great town manager, but of course it's always good to look and see, can you improve? Can you make it better? What can you do for your community? So, and it's a lot of work for the volunteers to do that. So congratulations for taking that on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely, and I'll echo what Julie said. Anytime we can help, just reach out. We're happy to help.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, likewise.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Michael.
So that was interesting.
It was, does even Mike adjust the
No,
temperature?
please do. I'm freezing.
So I'm so.
That was terrific.
That was
Yeah,
really, it was really
yeah.
interesting.
I feel like
wasn't
I'm going to want to talk to them again at some point. I feel like there's so much more.
it? Well, you know, it's because it's interesting, because one of the things I asked them, well, I reached out to them to say, would it be better for us to talk to you now, just as we're getting started, or should we wait till we have more specific questions? And Mike actually was the one who said, you know, it can really help shape your thoughts going forward to have at least this preliminary stuff. And I personally think it's really helpful. And the research that I did through the MMA site really was helpful for me too. I'm not saying I'll have to do that. I'm happy to have that information and share it as we move forward. But I just feel like I learned a lot from these guys and from the stuff I read. So the thing we were going to deal with tonight is, in particular, the Town Meeting Act. You know, and I think it's, so the act was first passed in 1930, and, you know, we had, before that, we'd been open meeting town. And you guys probably all know this, I grew up in the Midwest, so I never heard of town meetings until I moved here. And even just recently, I met with some of the women that I went to law school with, and they were like, what the heck is town meeting?
What did you have?
In Homewood, Illinois, we had we were really a township. And I was only a kid, I didn't really understand what the heck was going on. But, yeah, one of my friends was elected as like a town clerk in that town, I know that. But I don't really know how the town was operated. But anyway, so here, I understand in the communities that have open town meeting, any citizen can show up. You have to have some minimum amount for your quorum, and that's usually set by your town charter. And I've heard stories of town meetings having to be, what's the word, suspended
Yep.
or postponed because they don't have enough people, they don't have a quorum. And so it could be really difficult. Representative town meeting sounds better because you at least have people who've stepped forward to show an interest and to run for office. And if you know you're a town meeting member, not everybody shows up to every town meeting certainly, but I've never been at a town meeting in Danvers where there wasn't a quorum.
I will say too, as someone who grew up in an open town meeting town, the other effect of that was you would have meetings that would be 3 or 4 days. So because you could have everyone, if you have a very active community, which is a good thing, but also sort of meetings could go off the rails a little bit. So there are downsides, I think, both in terms of getting people to attend, but also sort of that, it's almost a little too free form sometimes, at least from my experience growing up.
The comment about that is that having been a town meeting member now for, I think, about 12 years,
Oh, long
I often
time.
wondered if some of the times when we make decisions on certain things, it's more about just getting the heck out of there. And the people feel hesitant to, obviously step up in front of the crowd. I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some hesitancy about, if I bring this thing up and it becomes more elaborate, then now we're gonna go and now we're gonna have to come back another day.
Yeah,
So that was one of the things that I often think about when I get at the town meeting, especially when there's some
straightforward.
difference of opinion.
Yeah,
I sense that may be driving it sometimes.
well, it's funny too, because like this past day was my first time meeting here, and it was interesting to your point, like, we passed the budget like that, but then you spend 20 minutes on some other issue that may have been comparatively minor, and I'm sitting there saying, well, wait, what? Like, so I feel that like there's almost that aspect of, it's funny because I attended with my neighbor who's been a long time town meeting member, and there's sort of like, when something goes on, there's like the groan of, oh no, here we go again, but it's like, well, if it's worth debating, we should debate it, and if it needs to take longer, it'll take longer.
I often wonder though if anyone changes anyone's mind during those, like people that get up in front of town meeting and say their piece, are they changing anyone's mind that's there? Or are they already like, I know how I'm voting for this? So different people get up and I don't know that anyone goes, you know what, they're right. I
Well,
don't know.
that's a good question, because I was a town meeting member for I don't know how many years, and then was appointed to the finance committee, and I was on that for a long time, and you can't be a town meeting member when you're a finance committee. So, and then after I left the finance committee, about a year or two after that, I ran again for town meeting, so I was on town meeting for a little bit, then finance committee at every town meeting, but not able to speak. That was so weird. And then now, like another 1 or 2 years of town meeting. I think I've seen people change their minds.
Oh, really?
I feel that I have, but I wasn't usually an active participant. I was a FinCom meeting member,
Right.
but I think people change their minds.
Well, to that point, I think it was the last town meeting, that woman got up and she actually commented upon some financial thing. And I'm
Oh,
going, whoa!
The light.
Yes, the light,
And
yes!
it was like an aha moment, or not the fact she stood up, but the fact that she actually changed something.
Yeah.
And everybody agreed with her and said that, yeah, that's a good idea. And I look at people in my precinct and they're saying, yeah, that was a good idea. I wasn't thinking that way.
Wasn't she
But the
just elected that night?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I guess my point is, when you go
Amazing.
back to the opportunity, there are other factors that prevent that from happening. And to think that that would happen on a regular basis in a large collection of citizens may be a little bit wishful thinking.
Yeah,
Well, another thing people kind of mentioned, I think it was here, about how frustrating it is when you get to town meeting and you see somebody opening up that envelope for the first time,
Yeah.
they haven't looked it over.
yeah,
Good Dad Street.
Yeah.
That can be so frustrating. And I was thinking maybe one function we can have when we do submit our report back to town meeting is to say, we think that that's a bad thing, and we think people should be prepared when they come to town meeting, and to encourage people to listen to the finance committee meetings or attend them if they're able to. And maybe it's an argument for making town meeting a little smaller, so that the people there maybe are more committed. I don't know, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, the people whose minds are being changed, I think, aren't the people who are getting up and speaking. Their minds are set.
Right.
But the
Right.
person who just opened the envelope that
Mm.
day,
Yeah,
they're a
I
blank
suppose-
slate.
Right, I
And they could
suppose
be
that's true.
convinced,
I
you know.
suppose that's true.
It's
But,
interesting.
But I guess if you go to meetings or are informed about the things you probably have already.
Yeah, because so much has happened before you get to
Right,
the
right,
town
right,
meeting,
right,
and that
right.
shapes
Yeah,
your
so-
views, yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the size of the town meeting, and I don't know the answer to this, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Doesn't need to be that big.
well, the Town Meeting Act says we should be smaller than we are, and we keep adjusting over time with the census, and I don't know where that comes from. Is that something that we're just doing on our own, or is there another state law that's directing us to do that? Like, 'cause it's not just reallocating among precincts, we're adding numbers
Right.
to the town meeting.
And so I was speaking to someone about just town meeting, and they had an interesting comment. They said, yeah, you know, the town meeting was set up way back when there was smaller numbers in Danvers, and you'd walk into a town meeting, and you may know 50% of the people,
Yeah.
or 30% of the people that there.
Right.
That's not the case now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so in other words, that, the small, it was, I would assume it would be much smaller, going back to 1930, I would think.
Well, there does seem to be shall each precinct consist of the largest number divisible by 3?
Yes.
Which I had a question about that. That seems somewhat
So-
arbitrary, but
Yeah.
there
Well,
must
that's
be a
so you have
source.
staggered terms.
It's to stagger the terms,
Oh, okay.
so that
Okay.
every year, only a third of the precinct
Okay.
representatives are up for election.
Got it.
That
Okay.
has gotten screwed up because
The census.
of the census,
Yeah.
which was what,
22.
Well, it's every
It would've been-
10 years. It's
so
in
it
the
would've been
it would've been
2020.
and then it gets,
Okay,
by the
It's
time it
22.
gets rolled into the town meeting.
2022.
population.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I,
But the town meeting act has a number in it.
Isn't it?
96, right?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah, the number's 96.
and we're
now.
like double that now, I think.
One-
144.
144, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was I think the thing that, I think we were talking about this last meeting, is where did that,
Yeah, is that
96
some other state
come from?
requirement that
Right.
we have to keep growing the number? But I agree, the smaller the body, the more likely the participants are, I think, to stand up
Mhm.
and to
Yes.
be engaged. Well, your selection pool is smaller, so the more engaged people are gonna wanna do it,
Right.
right?
I sometimes wonder, oh, please.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I guess I sometimes wonder if perhaps the larger issue is, no matter what our size is, there's really no requirement of informing yourself,
Right.
having the training, the training that they offer through the clerk's office that I was never able to attend. I really should have gone to that. To just to understand better how town meeting ran and what the actual decisions that are made mean.
Right.
Sometimes it's sort of a Robert's Rules of Order issue that I didn't understand, and I read through everything and thought I understood what my vote meant, and it actually meant something different. So I'm not sure that the number will solve all the problems. I think that in some circles, it will be construed as now you're limiting the power to an even smaller
Right.
number, and
That's what I was
I'm
gonna say.
still not being represented, I'm still not being heard.
Yeah, maybe.
It seems like the being informed and being ready and prepared is,
Is
Yeah.
different than
Perhaps.
the number of people.
yeah.
And I was gonna say that maybe by making it smaller, what we're really doing is making the voice of the residents of town softer, because they can only vote for 10 town meeting members as opposed to, what is it now, 18 per precinct? So there's that kind of, but maybe what we could do is have in the act, suggest amending the town meeting act to include, maybe not a requirement, but a strong suggestion, I don't know, that people go to a training class.
I almost think perhaps, I'm sorry, I'm not
I-
raising my hand. I'm
I
not doing a very good
I
job.
would just say that, I don't know, given people's lives in the modern world, I'm not sure if that would happen. And the other thing that struck me when Mike was talking is that he answered the question about how did people respond when they went from the town meeting to the new form. And he basically said the only people who really got upset were people who'd been comfortable, or that was their heritage with the plan. Now granted, Bridgewater was going through some serious financial situations, so I'm sure people are on board to, we got to change. But I thought that was kind of an interesting statement, that, you know, people would not all of a sudden come in, feel have a strong voice in saying, why are we doing this? We always did it this way, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm not advocating for any point, that's not my idea of bringing it up, but just something to consider.
I think, you know, you hear sometimes in the corporate world, there has to be a culture of excellence, let's say. Think of Boeing, for instance. That maybe we can encourage a culture of preparedness for town meeting members. Our report back to town meeting can be very broad, can be very specific. We can, I already think we're doing a really great job. But I think just that process alone is reminding people this is an important body. And it took us, 10 of us, meeting over the course of however long it takes to really review it carefully, and we have these ideas for you, and these are why we have the ideas. I think that begins to promote that idea that this is important work we're all doing as town meeting members. And the class, I've never gone to that class either, and I thought the first town meeting I ever went to, I was like, what the heck is going on here, right? And I see that in people's faces a lot too, is to maybe ask, I think it's the moderator that produces, that has those classes, to maybe say, hey, look, let's not just offer one class in that short period of time between the election and the first town meeting of a new town meeting. Let's make it be like 2 or 3 alternate times, because somebody who works might not be able to get to a training thing that's during the day, or somebody with little kids might not be able to come at night, or, you know, to say we need to have more than one session for new town meeting members to come in and learn what's what.
Or maybe she or he, she right now, would be willing to have that videotaped, and then it could be available.
Right.
You know, we all get emails as town meeting members. Maybe it could be emailed. People could be strongly encouraged to view it, but it would show up in their inbox, and they could do it when it was convenient.
What if they actually were required to do this before they ran for town meeting? So that it was, this is what is expected.
Get your signature, but also show that you've taken the course.
That you like
Yeah.
understand that you need to, because like this is an active role.
I don't know that you could require
You
anything.
probably can't, but.
And if you did or tried to, how would you regulate it? You know? What's the repercussion if you didn't, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
no, you're right. It's-
And the other thing I've often wondered, and this is very tangential, but before I forget it, because I know I will, I've often wondered why we elect new town meeting members and then immediately they go in and vote, as opposed to having that election take place right after the new town meeting. I've often wondered why a new town meeting member who may not have any exposure to the issues comes in and 2 weeks later is
Right.
voting on issues. And
Yeah,
that's
but
a good
no,
point.
it's
It's a good point.
question, because I think right now it's statutory, or charter
Yeah.
driven, of when, like, there's a town election, and that's when town meeting members, and the town election, I don't know why it's scheduled so close to town meeting day,
Yeah.
because it's only a couple of weeks.
But an outgoing town meeting member who was not reelected may have spent the entire year preparing for the new town meeting and doesn't get a chance to
Right.
vote or have his say.
I mean,
One other thing I just, to Fawn's point about sort of how the course is presented, and this might be beyond the scope of this, what we're talking about, but it might also be looking at how the warrant is presented. Like, obviously, they have to print it and mail it, and that's required, but are there other things they can do from an explanatory perspective for just knowing that we know that people are different kinds of learners? Some people are gonna sit there and read 50 pages, but other people, maybe they want a PowerPoint deck, I'm not sure, or maybe it's a FinCom video that breaks it down. I'm just wondering if that's something that's also to look at as sort of, you know, to, like, people are time crunched, and just sort of, are there other ways that we can present the information to town meeting members, you know, to maybe help people better digest it? Like,
Yeah,
just
because-
evolve that process.
Again, some of it might be statutory.
Right.
But the gap of time between, see, the warrant articles go through a process. I don't wanna wrap the budget stuff into it, but other warrant articles, let's say the fire department wants to have a warrant article that would buy a new fire truck. So they have to present that to the Board of Selectmen by a certain date. And then it has to go to the Finance Committee by a certain date. And then maybe it goes back to the Select Board, I'm not sure. But then, so once it's approved as a warrant
Right.
article, there's not a lot of time
Before the meeting.
before
right,
the
yeah.
town meeting, but maybe the warrant articles can be made available either to everybody in town or to
Yeah.
town meeting members, online for people to look at, as you say, learning different ways or
Right.
process information different ways. So it's not just coming in the mail like a week before a town meeting, right? It's not a big, long period of time.
Well, that and to your point, like, it's one of those things that we're like, I was elected, and then town meeting, I think, was like 2 or 3, whatever it was, and like, I got the warrant articles like a week before,
Right.
and I'm like, oh my god, like, it was sort of like, I mean, I dug into it and I felt rather prepared, but I also walked into the meeting being like, am I prepared? Like, so I do think that's a valid point to sort of make sure that folks who are going in there feel, and I'm sure that there were others who, I mean, granted, those are the woman who was elected the night of, who like apparently marked up the warrant in 5 minutes. But anyways, but there might be other folks sort of in a similar situation, so that might be something worth looking at.
I also remember when I was elected and everything came in the mail, and then I had the stuff from the previous year, the next batch came, and I had kept all that, and I remember someone in my family, I don't remember, said, do you need to shred that? Like, is that sort of, I forget the confidential
Yeah.
information? And I remember thinking, it should be the opposite
Yeah.
of confidential.
Yeah.
But it's,
It does
I
get
don't think
posted
it's,
after, I think.
I'm sure it does, and I'm sure it's all over the website, but I feel like, what about having it in the coffee shops? Like, what
Yeah.
about really putting it out there for people to view?
Yeah.
I think perhaps, at least to my family member, and it made me think about it, it has this sort of exclusivity feel to it, like there's this barrier to getting to that information about what issues are coming before the town, and
Because anyone can, because the fact of the matter is that anyone can go and speak. People should be encouraged, I think, to speak, but they need to know what's on the warrant.
right, and again, to your point, it may be beyond the scope of
Yeah.
kind of what we're doing, but it seems like it might
Okay.
address some of the
But it
issues
does
that we're
lay
dealing with.
I feel kind of like we're kind of approaching it from, yes, we should make it available to people, but then we have town meeting members who are elected who don't even read the So I'm kind of like, the people who are supposed to be the most engaged and the most concerned
Aren't always.
aren't always, and
Right.
what can we do to get them more engaged? Like, that's my,
Right.
biggest concern here. And one of the things, I think we might be moving on the edges of what our task was, but if we come up with recommendations for the town meeting act and some other, we thought of these things too, I think that's useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking, not about the town meeting act, but, if you go to town meeting, it's a very, it's dominated by people in the second half of their life. And you don't have young family members there, young parents, they're not represented there. And I understand why, everyone's busy, everyone's got stuff going on, but are there things that we could do to maybe encourage that? Or, and one of the things that I thought about was, I don't know, there was some event, and the town made available, like, hey, you can leave your kids here, we'll provide babysitting. Like, is that something that we could do during town meetings, so that parents who are stuck, like, oh, my spouse has to work that night, and just like a barrier that's taken away, something like that. Like, again, it's not something we would put in the charter, the town meeting
Right.
act, but something maybe we could recommend and maybe the town could take up.
I wonder that, or would people rather have do they want whoever's doing it just to do, do younger generations wanna go, just run it the way we want you to run it? Like, I don't wanna do it, but we want it done right, but I'm not looking to participate.
Well, an excellent question.
Excellent
question.
Because I think that's kind of where it's going. You agree? Yes. Yeah, I think younger generations are like, you do it. do what we want you to do.
My life is busy.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Well, I think there's a fundamental question. Again, this is
Right,
probably
but-
beyond our scope, but it's sort of
Yeah.
the fundamental question of how do you get just generally more people involved in town government and boards and commissions. And I think it is a broader question of, you know, part of it's incentivizing, but also part of it's getting people to understand the importance of town meeting. One of the reasons why I wanted to run for town meeting was I wanted to be more involved in the town. I wanted to have a say in the direction. Is, you know, but I think that you could say the same about any sort of board or commission. Again, this is probably beyond the scope. I think that's what everyone's touching on is sort of what do we do? How do we broadly incentivize people to just get involved in the town? Because it might not be town meeting, but maybe it's joining a board or commission. But I do think, I agree with you. There's sort of this like, I see this a lot, you know, of people who, oh, you know, they might complain about a decision that was made or something that was done, or I wish it had been done this way. But you're sort of sitting on the sidelines and you're not involved. So you're sort of, have you ever made the connection of, oh, I have to get involved, you know?
You have to make it easy for people to do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
And I think it could kind of come back to the culture thing I was talking about before, that if we can stimulate and encourage a culture of preparedness coming to town meeting, of the meaning and purpose and importance of it, and start the spreading of the word, sharing more information, making more people available, what town meeting is and does, and how you can be involved and why you want to be involved. That, I don't know, that could really help.
I was gonna say, maybe the answer's right under our noses, you know, for example, during our guest tonight, more than once, several times, talked about skills that are needed and certifications, and that things are just changing. Maybe we've outgrown the representative town meeting
Right.
form of government. Maybe that's the answer.
That has to be one of our questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I think of what we're talking about all these tweaking this and doing this and asking people to do this, and we're going to, I don't know if that's possible.
It's hard to change behavior.
You know, and given where we are
Yeah.
at young people's lives, so many gray hairs who are there, the size of our community as it was in 1930, maybe that's what we're facing.
Well, really, I mean, that is one of the bedrock questions I think that we have to deal with. Do we want to continue to be a representative town meeting community? Now, Dan, I thought, I made a copy of his email for everybody to see. Dan Gagnon, who couldn't be here tonight, said that he strongly believes that in general, we should keep the representative town meeting form of government. And he says, again, I'm just reading from his email, it's far better to have 144 elected representatives, scrutinize budgets and new bylaws, than to have only 7 city councilors who have party affiliations making these decisions for the whole town.
Do town councils have party affiliations?
Not necessarily, I mean, not,
Right, that's what Bridgewater is, town council, but it's
Town
not a
council.
city, it's not a mayor.
Right.
Correct.
it's not a mayor, but it is like a select board, I asked them and they are elected.
Right.
But the difference is like right now, town meeting is our legislative body in town.
Right.
And in his form of government, that city council is the legislative body.
Right, but they're not affiliated with a party.
Well, not necessarily, but
Right.
some cities and towns could become.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, here in Danvers, the select board, for instance, they don't run as being members of a particular party or
Right.
not. But you could see how that could evolve, and I don't even know, in the city of Boston, are the city councilors there? I don't know.
They do, yeah.
They do.
I don't even know that, so.
I mean, they're all Democrats.
But that, I mean, that's kind of a fundamental question. Here I've begun saying, let's first work on the Town Meeting Act first, and then deal with the town manager, but maybe that's the wrong order, because maybe the question is, should we stay? And I just,
I don't know how we answer that.
yeah, well, there's 2 ways to answer, I guess, or.
It's so simple.
It's
But it
kind of one or
feels-
the other.
It feels heavy for
It is
us to
heavy.
just kind of go, well, this is what.
Well, they're
I think.
recommendations.
Right.
I
but-
keep coming back to that because
Other
it starts to
than, like-
feel a little heavy.
Yeah,
And
other
it's the
than like
recommendations.
what I think it should be, I don't have any documentation as to why it should be? I just think, you know, whatever I think it should be is just my personal.
But you know, we guys now have had, you know, a couple of months of having this be a question that's rattling around in our head even when we're not at meetings. We're thinking about it more than probably the rest of the town meeting members are. So you really have a certain expertise that you're being asked to
Right,
share.
yeah.
And you don't feel like you've got the expertise yet, but you do. We're already forming questions and wondering about these things. That is valuable to me. So we don't have to make a decision tonight, should
No.
we? Or shouldn't we? But it's a very
Coin.
interesting exercise.
It is.
My thought is, right now, as of tonight, and it's not a written in stone feeling, but like Dan says, I mean, he's a young man, he's a historian. He thinks that we should keep a representative town meeting form of government. I think so too, because it's part of such a long tradition in this town. There's so many people in this town who, they may not think of it as town meeting, but there's a historic sense in the town. Maybe the town meeting needs to change shape, maybe it needs to be smaller, maybe fewer precincts, maybe fewer representatives per precinct. I don't know the answer to that, but I still think it is a unique and pretty special form of government. And our government works well. I don't see a need to throw out just because, for the sake of throwing it out. But it's just kind of where I've gotten to so far, and I don't feel like I'm done in my exploration. What do you think, Noah?
So I have two thoughts. So one, I thought the point that you made with Michael and Julie was a really good point about sort of thinking it through the lens of how are we serving our residents, our businesses, and our visitors. And I think that maybe that for our group is a good framing to keep coming back to is, you know, and as we sort of have more meetings, keep that in the back of our mind because that's really the end goal. And I would just say to your second point, I tend to lean towards keeping a representative town meeting because it's actually interesting that there's there is a movement sort of nationally. I think like LA is one of the cities that has taken on where there's more a move to sort of have more sort of community-oriented decision-making, and I'm blanking on the terminology. And I actually read a really interesting article I can send around to folks, but there's sort of, I think, been this sense of people want more citizen voices in the process. And so it seems like that's sort of maybe a trend, and maybe it's a trend that won't stay. But I do think everything we should do should be through that lens of what's best for the residents, businesses, and visitors. And I think that's a really helpful, when you said that, I was like, that's a great way to think about what we're doing, because I was struggling with like, sort of like, how do we make this decision? Like, it can't just be like
so
the vibes of what we want, you know?
Well, I mean,
But it is a
we
great
could spend a,
on-ramp.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead,
I
Mike.
was gonna say, we could spend a year coming up with a recommendation that'll
Right.
get voted down.
But you know, one
That's a
thing-
cheerful.
The one thing the town meeting does is it's an on-ramp for somebody who wants to be involved in their town,
Right.
to put their name in the ring and say, I think I'm interested in that. And it's a way for 140 to 150 people to be involved. Now, maybe we'd like them to be more involved, more prepared, more complete, but it is an on-ramp. I remember giving a little talk when I left the FinCom, suggesting people, find the thing that you're interested in that you can do. If your kids are little and just starting soccer, help the coach put the little cones around. If that's all you can do, that's good. You're contributing to your community, right? And maybe once your kids are in school, maybe you'll join that school's parent organization, or maybe you'll be interested in a special ed issue, or maybe you'll run for school committee. There's ways as our life evolves where you could be more available, less available, could do something, and you gotta find the thing that fits in your life at that moment. And boy, stepping into town meeting is really, it's a nice thing that allows anybody who's interested in doing. So to me, that's another reason that that I'm on the let's keep it. Now, it's 10 minutes of 8, and I've promised to try to keep our meetings 2 hours. And I also promised in our agenda for
That's you.
open this.
The public comment.
Public comment?
So Jim Morose and I, we know each other well, we lived on the same street for many years, his daughters babysat for my kids when they were little, so we know each other, that's why I'm calling him Jim, not out of disrespect. So, Jim, do you have something that you wanted to bring to us?
I'll just testify and summarize what I think you heard everyone say. I grew up in this town, and so my whole life, I lived my whole life in here, so when I got married, you know, I could care less about what the heck the town was doing. I was living large. And so, yeah, young married people aren't gonna get involved. And then at some point in time, when the kids get older and they go, what the heck's going on, then you get involved, think, well, crap. So that's why we're here. But, and I think to what he said, you know, they were talking about you know, we need a vision and direction for the town. Everybody should be working to the same thing. And like you say, a lot of the town team meeting members, they're not really on board with some of the stuff. But I think we should keep the town, but I think we should scale it back and maybe even put something in the future that says that in the future, we should probably even think about going to the town councilors. We should scale, 144, I think we should scale it back down. I don't know what controls that, we should find out what, and just move it down. But that would be what I would think.
Yeah, we need more management women.
Mhm.
John, I interrupted what you were gonna say.
I was just, I know, I have a little, no, I have a little rhetorical question that doesn't need to be brought up, but for another meeting.
Rhetorical questions are great.
No, I'm just gonna say, engagement of populations in their choices. I think that is absolutely a trend.
Yeah.
But do those town meeting members really do anything other than put their hand up?
Well, you know,
And then-
another,
but I might finish.
Yeah.
Going on a board, the many boards we have here in town, that, to me, where you can really impact
Yeah.
what's going on, change the things that go to the warrant, scrutinize the finance board. So if we were trying to engage people to get to those meetings, to me, that's where real
Yeah.
impactful things can happen
Yeah.
from our citizens. That's the way I see it. And if we're gonna make an emphasis, we're not gonna do that, that's not part of what we do. But just looking at the big picture, to me, that's where you wanna be.
that's interesting.
No, I agree with you, and I think, I mean, and I've talked with Steve and Jen about that, and they've said, you know, they've said that one of their biggest challenges is building out those boards and commissions, and with people who have expertise, and I forget, they were talking about something, and I forget what it was, but there was a vote on something, I think it was the, I'm blanking on what it was, but anyways, but someone came up to like Steve Barth after, was like, oh, like, I'm an expert in this area, and Steve was like, we could have got, like, we could have used you, you know, so I think there is that, like, frustration from the town perspective of, we have 20,000 people here, we have a wealth of experiences and people with, you know, intelligence in specific areas, and like, how do we get them involved to where they can make an impact, so I 100% agree with you.
So, one other area I wanted to touch base on, and I hope nobody feels like they're being cut off, because that's not my point at all. But one of the questions we had talked about last time is, could we get a flyer in the electric bills? Could we post information about our committee more broadly, et cetera? And so I spoke with Jen Breaker, the assistant town manager, and she was telling me that every Monday, she posts all the meetings for the next week on the Danvers, and all social media. And I said, well, what does that mean? I don't know what most of these terms mean. And she said that includes Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and the town's website, the town of Danvers website. And the town of Danvers has a Facebook page, is that the right word? Which I never really got onto before I talked with Jen about this. So she said they could do one or more call-outs, is the phrase she used, about the work that we're doing. And that's where I was thinking that maybe you could come in, working with Jen about what that should say. Oh, and she also said that when people are on one of their social media posts or on the town webpage, the town of Danvers webpage, people can ask for alerts on the agenda items there, on the committee and board meetings they're interested in. So Like if you were particularly interested in Conservation Commission or in historic stuff, you could ask to be alerted for just those meetings as opposed to have to go through the whole list, because it's a long list of all the meetings in the course of a week. So she said that's something that can be done. They cannot do the electric bill slips for 2 reasons. They're already booked for all the bills that are coming up, and they're reevaluating whether or not they should continue doing that. She also said, as you can see, I had one tiny piece of paper. I meant to type this up so I could share it with everybody, but I ran out of time. I asked about surveys. Could we, that we talked about maybe wanting to do a survey. And she said that they have an app for that. That if we put together the questions we want to ask, and again, I would turn maybe to Noah to draft, and we could discuss what we want to ask, and maybe he could generate questions for us. We could give the questions to Jen, who could then put them into the survey function of the webpage or whatever. And then that app gives us the raw data and pie charts and all the information. She said that, no, she said this, and I said, oh, as if I knew what it meant, but I didn't. She said the town has a Canva account. What the heck is that?
Canva's like a design tool, like a graphic design tool.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
I use it, it's great.
So if the app with our questions creates the survey, then the survey goes where, on the website, or it goes up on social media? Do we know how it gets to people?
I think they would post it on social media, but also on the website. So like when they did with the strategic Danvers surveys, that they would just push it out on social media, et cetera. So
I think it would be great if we could get a QR code and like post it around
post it,
town.
yeah, we could absolutely do that.
Yeah, QR code.
Yeah.
You're learning so much.
I still hate when I go into restaurants, and during COVID, I kind of got used to it, but okay, then I gotta get the QR
I know.
code. I just struggle with these things.
Did anyone else see that our meeting was on social media? And I was being rude, and I was getting on my phone to see if I could find it, and now I can't find it. But I got a notification about this meeting today, and it popped up in my Facebook feed. And I was curious if we did that, or did DCAT do that? So I was trying to go to DCAT to see if it was on their site, but it's not on their Facebook page.
Isn't this just what Jen was talking about? Is it not
Yeah,
just a
it's one of
post?
the.
Maybe it's just the town of Danvers?
Yeah, I think
It was
now that we
specifically for us.
post our meetings,
Yeah,
they alert everybody to
Right.
all the
Oh, here it
posted
is.
meetings.
It was DCAT.
yeah.
The capital
Oh,
one too?
decap.
Because I think they post, I think, everything they're broadcasting. And you can also get, like, if you're like a DCAT subscriber on YouTube, you would get a notification when they go live. So like anyone who like follows DCAT on YouTube would have gotten like a push
Gotcha.
notification like, tune in live, the town meeting manager.
It got 4 likes, this
Hey.
post.
So
How many were you?
One was me, and
So-
one share.
if we want before the next meeting, I can write something up. Maybe I could, is that okay if I share via email with the group? Because it's not like or do we?
Well, I sent out the agenda and the draft minutes to everybody.
Yeah.
Not because I was asking for votes, but just for informational
Right.
purposes. So I think you could send them out, but we wouldn't discuss them until we're at our meeting.
Okay, so maybe we can, I'll do that before the next meeting, and I think we're still in the early process, but I think maybe we could, at the next meeting, I can have something drafted up that's like a little bit of a blurb that Jen could share, but I can also, I could take a first pass at a
Unless-
survey if people were interested in me doing that.
If you're
Would that
willing, I
be-
think it'd be great.
Would that be considered a subcommittee though? If like,
Uh,
could we just not make him a subcommittee with, and then like, we would, or do we wanna approve what he's saying?
I think the whole committee should see it
Okay.
and approve
Yeah,
it.
at least want
Okay.
people to see
We
it.
could have a subcommittee work
I
on
appreciate
this.
the, I appreciate the
I was
trust
like,
now.
I think you're good.
But, we're a small enough group that I think, we certainly could decide to subcommittee out anything we wanted to.
Right.
I feel for a survey and for, what was the other thing, like the little blurb. that
Yeah.
Oh, that's-
I think for these things, we should all be involved, but maybe we'll break up into subcommittees if we decide, for instance, to have like 2 people look at the planning board, 2 people look at the
Yeah.
fire department, maybe we'll do that. I can't tell, but so that brings us to the next point, which is talking about and scheduling our next meetings. Now, I had said in our first unofficial meeting that I could see us having 1 meeting a month, June, July, August, which we've now done,
Yeah.
but that maybe starting in September, we would do 2.
Mhm.
Thursdays are proving kind of difficult for me, because I take care of my grandchildren on Thursdays, so, It tends to be a long day. So if there's a way we could avoid Thursdays, but I don't want to impose, I can make changes at my end if we need to, but I'm just saying Thursdays are proving a little harder than I thought they would. What do you think about trying to do 2 meetings in September?
Sure. I know Tuesdays are not good, because select board is on Tuesdays, planning board is on Tuesdays. So it's an active night for the town.
Okay.
And it might,
And I know select board's here, so.
and it might mean we need to find a different location, I'm thinking, because I think we chose Thursday because town hall's open.
Right,
Right.
and I also thought initially that if we needed staff people, like for instance to do minutes, that if it was Thursdays, they're open late on Thursday. I thought it would be convenient somehow, but if, you know, Ann Freitas is so great that she can do our minutes remotely, we don't need to worry about a person physically present, so that consideration
It's not.
is not there. So, okay, so if Mondays and Tuesdays are particularly bad, and I should have tried to look up general meeting dates.
Well, just a quick point,
Yeah,
the selectmen only meet the first and third Tuesdays, so the second and fourth Tuesdays would be open, I guess.
Right, it would be planning board, but, yeah, or the opposite Tuesdays, not here.
Yeah, oh,
Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
But
But that's fine.
if this is the meeting, yeah, because there is
Oh,
a,
planning board doesn't do, although weren't they gonna come back here? I know, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying things, don't worry about it.
I mean, the town will come up with a meeting place for us.
Right.
And I think it would be good to not limit us to just September, but if we did something like the second and fourth Tuesday, whatever, and that's our schedule every month going forward, that way I think we can start inviting people to come on particular nights when we know we're gonna be meeting that night. It's 2 months from now, but we're gonna be meeting that night, and we're gonna be dealing with the, I keep saying planning board, I'm trying to think of other examples of boards that we'll wanna have input from.
Some boards.
Zoning,
Yeah.
zoning appeals, or, you know, who I think would be interesting is there's I don't remember the name of the position, but like the business outreach person for the town, you know, to have that person come in and talk to us about. So anyway,
On Wednesdays, or, I don't know, I'm just
I
throwing
was,
that out
I
there.
was wondering about Wednesdays, I mean,
Or Wednesday.
anybody have thoughts about when, and of course, we're missing a
Depends
couple
on
of
the
people tonight.
time.
But-
I mean, it depends on the time. I mean, the earliest I could get here on a Wednesday would be about 6. But
Or
if the
is there a
6,
day better than?
it's a little hard for me to, some school schedules are not set
Oh,
yet. So, I mean,
yeah,
there's no
yeah.
way we can even endeavor to work around things that I don't know yet. So I'm not worried about that, but
And we can, and everybody should feel free that if we set up something and you find, oh, you know, this is just not working for me, we can discuss it, we can change it. This shouldn't be, you know, a life-altering situation. We're volunteers and we're doing some important work, but I wanna make sure it's comfortable, accessible for everybody. So Mike, do you have a particular day of the week you'd like to,
Tuesdays and Wednesdays are fine for me.
how about you, John?
Whatever, yeah.
Noah?
I could do either Tuesdays or Wednesdays, both are pretty good for me.
Okay, and fun Tuesdays, Wednesdays?
depending on the time, I mean, if we're okay with like a 6 o'clock start time, then either
There,
one
yeah.
should work.
That's what we've been, so I'm assuming that's what we'll do. How about you, Noah?
I would only prefer Wednesdays because I tend to go to both select board
And
and,
planning.
and planning board meetings, but it doesn't, I can miss them, it's fine.
No, because I think that's gonna be important. You'll be able to give us.
We were just
Could
talking
be our
about involvement, don't
liaison.
undercut involvement.
How about you, John?
Yeah, Wednesday's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we try, what did you say? The first, what were you saying before?
The selectmen meet the first and third Tuesdays, and the planning board is the second and fourth Tuesdays. That's-
So Wednesdays
we're-
are
We're
fine.
avoiding it with Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so what should we say? Should we aim for the second and fourth?
Sure.
let's do it.
Second and fourth, and I'll check with Jen Breaker and Ann
Let's see who's.
tomorrow to see if that's a conflict, if that's doable.
So that'll be the 11th and the 25th for September, is that,
Yes.
okay.
So Sally, would we be doing second and fourth Wednesday of each month? Is that what the pattern would be?
Yeah, that's what I'm anticipating, though, again, I wanna run it past, Jen Breaker's office to make sure that that's doable, that there's not something else out there that we're not
And
aware
the
of.
other three.
And the other three.
Yeah.
True.
So let me just see. What's
I'm gonna
the-
put it in for September and October and see. Looks like on October 23rd, if anyone was hoping to attend the living room conversations that I think are occurring with Heathmere through the HRIC, there would be a conflict with this meeting, but I'm just letting people know.
There's a, I'm just trying to see if there's anything. Bye, Jen. See if there was any regularly scheduled Wednesday things that. It doesn't, no, the library trustees meeting, that is at the library.
Yeah, because Natalie's on that, the library committee, right? I think so.
And then retirement, so they're only once a month on Wednesdays, and the retirement board is once a month on Wednesdays, but that's a morning meeting from
Okay.
10 to 1, so.
So, shall we, I'll send the letter out to the people we identified as being potentially interesting to us to hear from on the town meeting act. That would be the select board, town clerk, town moderator, FinCom. I'll send that letter out, and we'll aim for that discussion to be September 11th, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but on that, of people or organizations, from, sort of jumping from what he was saying and where we're coming from about wanting to think about perhaps how our town is perceived by businesses, I think you mentioned a liaison, a business liaison. I'm not sure I'm using the right term, but I'm wondering if we feel strongly enough about getting that feedback that we would want to include them in this letter, or we would want them to receive this letter as well.
I was gonna say, this particular undertaking is to talk about the town meeting act, the law that creates the structure of the town meeting. It doesn't deal with the question of whether we should
Doesn't,
continue town
yeah.
meeting or not. I was thinking the person that's, let me see if I can find it, the name of the person, it's in that, remember the, chart we had that shows the structure?
Oh, yeah.
If I saw the name, I remember, here it is. The organizational chart. Planning and economic development.
Yeah.
So I think that person we probably want more when we're talking about the
Town
town
meeting.
manager act.
Town manager, okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I'll invite those town meeting act commentators to either attend our September 11 meeting or send us their input by September 11.
Okay. And I'll work on a short description, then I'll also take a first pass at some survey questions.
Thanks, John.
Are you envisioning a survey to just the general public or to town meeting members? What are we?
It's a good question. I mean, I was thinking, I guess we almost both. I think it'd be valuable to hear from the general public. Because what I'm interested in is like, how many people even, I'm sure there's residents who don't even know we have a town meeting.
I'm sure.
Or just sort of general awareness of town meeting or what they think town meeting does. Because I think what I'd want to get at is sort of the perceptions of like, what do people think that this body does? Do they think this body is accountable to, that sort of thing. But I think maybe a survey to town meeting members is also in order. I don't know how people feel about it too. I mean, it would be different surveys, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that could be valuable. I mean, I think if we're thinking about changing town meeting, we should probably talk to the town meeting, get input from the town meeting members. I don't know if we want to prioritize one or the other. Start with something town-wide first and then do something with the town meeting members later. I don't know how people feel about that.
I mean, I think that a survey of the town, broadly,
Yeah,
might want to cover more ground than just town meeting,
right.
right? Like cover, does the town government work for you?
Right.
Do you encounter difficulties like what he was describing?
Right.
But pinging the town meeting members specifically might be like targeted towards,
Yeah,
what do you think about town meeting?
right.
And what can we do to improve that experience?
Right, right. So it's a more, it's almost like a survey to town meeting members might be just about the town meeting act,
Right.
that part.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And then a broader citizen petition or series of questions about how does government work from your perspective? Or how, yeah. Or are you happy with it, or what suggestions would you have? But a lot of people, I bet a lot of people don't know, for instance, that, that different boards and commissions are appointed by the town manager. People
Right.
probably don't think about that, don't realize that. So I don't know how much real helpful input we'll get from that, but we won't know unless we try,
Yeah.
right?
so is there a sense that we want to prioritize one for the other? Do we want to just do both sort of concurrently? I mean, I'm happy to do that.
I think reaching out to the town covers town meeting members as well, and I think public perception of how much we are soliciting input is important.
Yeah,
Could always
And-
ask it
In
the-
addition to, actually soliciting and getting information, but I think that public perception is important.
You can always ask it in a question. Are you,
Well, that's what I was thinking.
you're
We could
a
ask, are you a
resident?
town
Are you a
meeting
town meeting member? Are you a business owner
Yeah.
in town? You know,
start
query
getting
it
some of
that
those
way.
demographics,
And you
yeah.
can, you can sort the
Right,
results however you want.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good point. And the
Because-
perception part, I think, is very important too. People might not answer, but they'll think, oh, this is really cool, they're asking.
At least they're asking.
At least rounds, yeah.
And to direct it just towards town meeting, it feels like, isn't that actually what aren't we supposed to represent kind of what town meeting should do? And if we ask everybody in town meeting what they think,
And we just undermine the.
of what our point is,
I mean, you want to get a survey like that to go to business owners who may not even be residents of the town.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, Mike talked about that in one of his discussions
Right.
about, you know, how many storefronts were closed,
Right.
vacant for 10, 12 years the whole
Right.
time. Why?
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that was an interesting, I think Julie talked about the business roundtable
Yeah.
that they held every quarter or something with business.
I mean, you wouldn't include, you wouldn't be able to reach somebody in that instance where there's a closed storefront. But if you had a business owner who was not a resident of the town and had experienced trouble or difficulties
Right.
because of the way the town operates, you know,
Fair enough.
not being able to go to a town council meeting in 2 weeks versus a town meeting that's in 8 months,
Right,
you'd
Right.
wanna know that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sure is.
Well, again, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, not because I'm trying to kick people up, but I'm trying to, I tried to make a commitment at the start. We'll keep our segments at 2 hours, and we may find there's gonna be a time we need to extend that. And I've added 15 minutes because at the start, we had technical problems. Doesn't it make you feel a little bit like Elon Musk?
That's right.
Just like him.
I feel
Just
So
just
it's
like
only at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you all
what's
very
second
much.
one?
We need to have a motion.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm supposed to make note of the time, too. Okay, do I have a motion? to
I so
adjourn?
move.
That motion?
Second.
Second, from Juan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned, thank you all so very much.
Do we want to take the road? We weren't on a